welcome everyone. This is episode 1 of Goodie and MoMo7 at the movies. We just rewatched Avengers Infinity War, and we are going to bring you our little review. This is the first review for us. I'm Goodie, this is Momo7. We are going to try and do this as often as possible and post some reviews on some of the more popular films that have been coming out throughout the year and some that have been released in the past few years. We figured we'd start off with this one today since Avengers Endgame is going to be coming out in the next couple of months. Myself, I have loved movies for pretty much all my life, all different types of film, a lot more science fiction, action, comedy. Big fan of Star Wars films as well as superhero films, and I will let Momo7 do his intro.
Hi everybody, I'm Johnny Mo, aka Momo7. I'm a big movie fanatic and a comic book fanatic. Those are probably my number 1 and number 2 hobbies. So having this first episode as a review of Avengers Infinity War is perfect for me. I've been a big movie fan ever since I was a kid. My movie love of movies goes to all decades, all genres, all countries, although predominantly most of the films I am familiar with is definitely, American or United States based or English speaking, but I have dabbled in every single area of film that you can come up with. Just want to throw something out there, just a little bit of the language that I'll probably be using for this episode and any further ones. When it comes to criticizing film or reviewing film, and this goes for almost anything that you can criticize or review, there are 3 scales to how things can be categorized in a sense, and I've been a big proponent of this my entire life, and how you talk about things, and there's what is greatness versus quality versus your favorite. At the end of the day, your favorite is what you like the best, regardless of anything else, and quality can be very subjective, what is the best or what is better than something else. I mean, there can be a lot of argument about that. And greatness is more of a reflection of the historical record. Greatness is, there's a little bit of subjectivity to it that you could argue, but at the end of the day, greatness of something is something that is established. It's almost a recognition of something's place in history. I could argue that Paris is one of the greatest cities in the world, even though I've never been there. I don't need to be there. It is historical. It is a part of history. Whether I would like it or not is something else. Whether it's the best city on earth, that's something else. So when I mention those things, it will depend on what scale you're looking at, and I think that goes with anything. So just wanted to get that out there. Never have to say that again, because I would like to think that people that follow this would start with episode 1, know who we are and how we think and what our passions are, and then just go forward from there. Yeah, and we never really have to go over the same ground twice. So get us from the beginning and keep going.
And just remember too that these are our opinions.
Sure.
These don't really count for anything other than for us. We thought this would be fun to watch something and kind of share a passion that we both love and talk about those films other than just to each other. Mm-hmm. This is something that we've wanted to do for a very long time, and we thought at the beginning of 2019 was a good time to really start this. So you may either agree, disagree, see a lot of our viewpoints, and that's all great. There are going to be movies that he and I will disagree with, some that we both love, some that we both dislike. And you and the audience may feel the exact same way, and that's perfectly fine. So we hope you guys join us below with some of the comments afterwards. We will try and answer questions on the subsequent episodes that we do, and we're going to try and make this a lot of fun. So I think with that, let's get started with Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, this is all food for thought and entertainment purposes, and like Goody said before, we've always wanted to do this. Well, the reality is we've always been doing this. We've just never done it in front.
That's true. We've never done it in front of a camera.
We've never done it in front of the camera. We finally decided to capture the many conversations that we have about films and whatnot. We've had these conversations numerous times and passionately.
Absolutely.
To sort of to do it in front of an audience, to people could either just enjoy the back and forth and maybe even learn something, something that you haven't heard before, or see something from a different point of view.
Absolutely.
So I hope everyone does enjoy this and continues to come back for later episodes, and hopefully this one is fantastic. But like Goody said, this is a great starting point. Avengers Infinity War. So with that, I will.
Yeah, well said.
I will
well
let
said.
Goody open with the opening volley.
Avengers Infinity War was I think it was a huge accomplishment. It was 10 years of building up to this. Marvel has done a very good job. They've had a very, formulaic, is that correct?
Formulaic
Process to the whole thing, which has really worked out well for them. Most of their films have been received very well critically, as well as done very well at the box office. Infinity War, I would put up there, possibly in my top 5 for Marvel's films. So,
hi everybody. So we're back. One of our third, I wouldn't say our third passion, but one of Goody's and mine's passions is the consumption of alcohol. So to start
our inaugural, or I should say our first ever episode of this, we're going to do a little cheers.
Cheers. Nothing better than a pint of Guinness to get the creative juices flowing.
Every episode we will probably have some type of beverage with us as we go through our review. Just kind of keep things fun and flowing along. So
you will certainly get a world tour.
Most likely. We actually are filming out in New York. A lot of some of the local breweries I am a big fan of, so I typically will usually have a glass of one of those.
Yes. What are you drinking?
So right now I'm drinking a Blue Point, a Blue Point beer right now from the Blue Point Brewery that's in Patchogue. So with that, let's get started back into Avengers Infinity War. This is a 10-year culmination of films that Marvel has put out. I believe Infinity War was film number, that was 20 or 21, I think. I can't believe it's actually been that many films, but I'm starting with Iron Man back in 2008 and just kind of going forward from there. The visual effects in this film are outstanding. I would say that's one of the first things that really does stand out in this film, and it's been nominated for an Academy Award in the visual effects category, so I think that should definitely speak for itself. I love the repetitive theme from Alan Silvestri, the Avengers theme. To me, that is the Avengers theme is the one theme that stands out in the Marvel Universe. I can't remember too many other themes from all the other characters in the films, except for the Avengers one. The first time they do that panoramic view with all the Avengers set back to back.
Hey everybody, so we're back.
So we left off with I think Alan Silvestri.
Yes.
So
we're going to have some creative edits here, only because we have it's unavoidable. We have a house full of people, and we will get interrupted, and that's okay. That's life.
Like I was telling you, I think Alan Silvestri's theme for the Avengers has really stood out throughout all of the Marvel films. Most of the other ones, I don't think are as iconic. I think this is definitely going to be one of the themes that's always remembered. The storyline itself, it starts off pretty much leaving where Thor Ragnarok left off. Having all the Asgardians up on that ship. In the end of Thor Ragnarok, there were a ton of Asgardians on that ship, and you really only see like the small handful on the bridge area.
I'm sure, and it's interesting because I think they state that only half of them were killed, but I think it looks like they're all dead.
It looks like they're all dead because it looks like the ship basically is destroyed by the time the Guardians of the Galaxy get there. So we don't really know what happens to them. But Thor does mention that he killed. That Thanos had killed most of his people on board that ship.
Yeah, but to me it looked like they were all floating around in space dead. And if they if the Guardians only walked away with Thor from there, they're also going to float out there. And
exactly. I mean, I can't see them killing them off. I mean, the fact they just introduced Valkyrie back in Thor Ragnarok, and she was such a popular character, and she had such a good role. I would think they would want to use her again in some way, shape, or form. So I can't see that.
Yeah.
We see the on-screen deaths of both Heimdall and Loki. Now, this is all before the snap, so we don't necessarily know what their fates are going to be come Endgame.
I'll have more to say about that later.
I think when we get towards like the end of this review and when we actually discuss the snap and the ramifications of it, I think we can really get into that. By the way, if you didn't really notice this, spoilers, okay, I will say that right off the bat, but this film has been out almost a year, so if you haven't seen it by now and are watching this video, stop and go watch the movie.
Right, and if you haven't seen any of the Marvel movies, I would highly recommend you watch them all in order.
In order. Might take you a while.
The funny thing about the Marvel movies is that each one is independently enjoyable, but they are part of a larger superstructural story. So watching them in order, which is basically what we did, we watched them in order of theatrical release because we went to see them all in the movies. But watching them in order is a higher level of satisfaction because you get to follow the larger story that's being taken place, which is ultimately culminating in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, which is really exciting. And like I said, it's been a 10-year journey, so it was a huge investment from Marvel Studios in terms of money and dedication and storyline. This is one of the things that basically has set apart all other comic book studios or comic book movies or franchises, is that they have invested into this storyline that is basically it's a Marvel cinematic universe where all the movies are interconnected. Where previously, even previous Marvel movies and almost anything made by DC in long past, basically every movie itself was an independent entity, or each franchise was its own independent entity, and there was no crossover. And Marvel, basically did this from the very beginning. Their intentions at the very beginning were to make it larger. With Iron Man 1, 10 years ago, it wasn't like they just kind of started making movies and decided to link them together later or through the course of the process. They had this design put in place in the very beginning, and it was very ambitious.
Yeah.
And it paid off, because if you look at the amount of money that these movies have made and the popularity of these movies, and how good they are, and they're all different. It's been a long, amazing journey, and it's from a cinematic perspective, and from a comic book perspective or a comic book movie perspective. It's been a really enjoyable ride, and it's not going to be over.
No, they've got plans. I mean, what are they going into right now? This is the end of Phase 3, and they're going to be starting Phase 4, I think, after Endgame.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, if you think about that the introduction of the whole thing was at the very end of Iron Man. The very first after credits scene that Marvel has made so popular is Nick Fury saying, you just became a part of
something bigger.
Something bigger, and that was incredible. I don't think anybody really expected to see that happen. And then where they went from there, and of course, Tony Stark having the cameo at the end of The Incredible Hulk, and so on and so forth, as the movies have just gone along, and they've gone on further.
We apologize if there's any background noise, because there are kids in the house, and that's okay. We both have families. It is what it is. It's interesting what we were bringing up, the fact that these movies have been around for 10 years, and the reality is that after 10 years, you have these actors and actresses that have been playing these roles for a long time, and Marvel has a succession theory in the sense that what's his name? Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is not going to be playing Iron Man for
10 more years.
20, 30 years.
Right.
There's a certain, shelf life. Unlike in the comic books where characters live forever, these people are aging and they have contracts and they've been set up for a certain number of films. And with the wave of characters that have been introduced, the older characters are inevitably had to be phased out to make way for some of the newer characters. And the great thing about the Marvel Universe is, comic book wise, is that there are so many characters to choose from they didn't just put everybody in at once, and 10 years from now, everybody's gone, and now they don't have anything to do. Everybody's been introduced over the course of time, and they still have more characters, which have not been introduced yet. And I think Chris could speak to this, Goody could speak to this in the terms of Marvel Studios getting back the rights to
the rights for
other
all
characters.
their other characters, all from from Fox, the X-Men characters, Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four. I'm sure we are going to be seeing that intertwined at some point in the next year or so. I think there's going to be more details that are being put out about that. I mean, Kevin Feige has been an absolute architect when it comes to designing all these phases and where these movies are going to go. I think from the very beginning he had a roadmap, and they have stood by it. And whether some things, I mean, Inhumans ended up getting canceled. They pushed that to TV. That didn't do so hot. They've had to change directors a few times. Things happen, unfortunately, behind the scenes that we don't really know about. But they have recovered just about every single time, and they've made very wise business decisions. And it's like Momo was saying, it's paid off.
Yeah.
So I see that continuing going forward. And I think they're going to keep putting out a high quality product. I don't think that's really in question, because at some point these characters are going to go. I think we already know in Endgame that there are going to be characters from the original Avengers that pass on in one way or another, whether they are physically killed on screen or they quote unquote retire from the role, and someone else that's already existing in the universe is going to take over their spot, similarly to the way that's occurred in comics. But it's just impossible. There's no fountain of youth where we can keep these actors around forever to keep playing these roles. As much as we would like someone like a Chris Evans or Robert Downey Jr. or even Chris Hemsworth, how good they have been in these roles, and they will always be remembered for that. Very much like the way that Christopher Reeve is always remembered for being Superman. I don't think that's ever going to change with some of these guys. Like Robert Downey Jr., you look at him, you hear his name, and automatically you think of Tony Stark. I don't think you can separate those two 10 years later. Like that, he has catapulted himself as one of the best right now in Hollywood, especially money-making wise, because of this franchise. And it's just gone on between the cameos that he's made, and just starring in some of these films. It'll be interesting to see what happens to some of these guys after they leave the Marvel Universe. I'm sure some of them will continue to do very well, but where these roles go afterwards, where the characters themselves go, should be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to note that like you said, the first 10 years for the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been almost entirely focused on the Avengers and their periphery characters, and now as that wave is leaving, it opens up for the next wave of where you can do another 5 or 10 year major story arc with other huge characters. Once you start pulling in the mutants, the X-Men into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer. These are the mutant universe is enormous, and the scope of the Fantastic Four's universe that they're dealing with it is enormous as well, because they're constantly have dealt with cosmic entities and things of that nature. So the potential is absolutely enormous. I'm really looking forward for the next 10 years for what's coming out. Even though a lot of characters have been bled off into Netflix. A lot of original Marvel characters, now populate the Netflix universe, which is actually part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Part of the MCU.
Even though they don't really appear,
it's for the MCU.
They reference each other.
The MCU doesn't reference those characters as much, but the Netflix shows have mentioned events that have occurred. A lot of it was the event in New York, I think, so to speak. That was mentioned a couple times. Newspapers that were mentioned about the invasion of New York. You saw that, I think, a few times in Daredevil. Now, even though those shows are being canceled on Netflix, who knows what's going to happen with the Disney streaming service, if those are going to get transferred over at some point. I don't think we're going to lose those characters. I think we might get them back in some way.
I would like to think so.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be on screen which is, I guess, a little bit of a shame. As far as the big screen goes, I don't think you're going to see Charlie Cox dressed up as Daredevil in a future Avengers film, as much as we would probably like to see something like that, because Charlie Cox has done a great job, I think, with Daredevil. I think that's going to probably stick to more streaming, as well as some of the MCU characters now also coming to the Disney streaming service. They were talking about a Scarlet Witch show, Loki even getting his own series. I think even Falcon was being talked about getting his own series. So I think you're going to start to see some of those characters once. I'm sure once Disney starts to really release more information about their streaming service. Probably that will happen later this year, is my guess. That we should start to see a plan for those characters as well. Yeah. It's interesting because we talk about. Obviously, this episode is all supposed to be about the Avengers: Infinity War, but it's kind of hard to just discuss that and not take into consideration everything that's led up to this.
And that's exactly the whole. That is the crux of everything. Is that because you're dealing with a Marvel movie universe, the Avengers movie is not its own exclusive topic.
The scope of it is just so large.
It is involved with everything, absolutely.
And as much as we're going to obviously continue to talk about the Avengers film after this, but it's just amazing what they've been able to accomplish in 10 years, and the entertainment that they've given us, and the content that we've been able to watch. Most of it being good, I would say, and enjoyable. And
I wouldn't say it would be outside of the realm of possibility to take some of those Netflix characters and maybe handpick them and pull them into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I think they could.
And even if they're recast, because keep in mind the person playing the Hulk now is not the original.
It's not Ed Norton.
Is not Ed Norton.
No.
As
much as I liked Ed Norton, Mark Ruffalo has done an amazing job stepping in.
Yeah.
And even Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle stepped in for who was in that first Iron Man film? Oh, that's gonna kill me.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Well, even Thanos is not the original actor.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, and it's always been when they first introduced Thanos in the original Easter eggs of some of the earlier movies. I really, really liked who was playing him, and then when they switched over to what's his name? Oh man, we just watched it too. Sorry,
we'll
guys,
come up with that. We're on the spot. We kind of got a little deer in headlights, but we'll figure it all out.
We're a little light on some of the exact specifics because we're just kind of going into this. But at the end of the day, we do have our firm opinions and stories to tell. Having I felt that the person they replaced with Thanos wasn't as good as the first choice, but we've been stuck with this character for so long. He's actually grown on me.
Josh
Brolin, and now it's being that he's been stuck in Easter eggs with snippets, and it's like little.
He did make a small appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy. There was a small appearance of him as Josh Brolin. That was Josh Brolin that did that.
Smaller appearances, and now with Avengers: Infinity War, a full-blown character fleshed out with many scenes. There's much more opportunity to do it as opposed to a soundbite, or a movie bite. This is a full movie based on this character.
But that's a good transition to go back into Infinity War because this movie's really about him. As much as we get just about every character, all these main characters from all these subsequent films that have been out there, Thanos is the main character in this film.
And this is very funny. I just noticed this. I mean, maybe even for the first time. So we just finished watching the film, and it's always best time to talk about a film is right after you watch it because you remember so much more. The final line in the credits.
Yes, you just saw this.
Is very interesting. It says Thanos will return. Whereas in previous movies it's been
always the hero.
Doctor Strange will return or Spider-Man will return. Thanos will return.
Right.
And that is very interesting.
And I know that the Russo brothers have already pretty much gone on and said that this was Thanos' story. That this whole thing, this was his story to tell. And I don't know if they're trying to make him a sympathetic character in some instances, especially when he takes Gamora and throws her off the ledge to sacrifice her. There was an emotional component to that, and you can almost see the struggle in Thanos' face when he makes that choice to throw her off and basically kill his daughter. But he firmly believes what he's doing is right.
Yeah.
And no one is going to tell him otherwise. There's no talking him out of this. None of the main heroes were able to persuade him otherwise, and I don't think that's going to change going forward.
I tell you, this take on Thanos is very different from the original comic book Thanos. You could almost argue that this cinematic Thanos has a valid point. He is not evil. He is not killing.
In his eyes. In his eyes,
he is not killing for the sake of killing. He is killing for a higher purpose. And it is actually a very appealing argument. It is insensitive to the individual, but it is very sensitive to the greater needs of the universe, which he has taken upon himself to be the caretaker of. The one person willing to make the hard choices. But the significant departure from the original comic book Thanos is very, very interesting, because the original Thanos is a very flawed comic book character, and he is mainly interested in conquest and taking over. And his original motive back in the 70s was not to kill half the universe. His motive was to kill everybody, which is a radically
for a villain.
Yeah, that's a radically
villain, yes.
different end game. His goal in the 70s was to literally kill everyone as an offering to the entity of death, which he had infatuation with. So if you want to kind of read the original comic book storylines, which are really good, just slightly
Did you read the original? I think it was Infinity Gauntlet. Some of this was taken from. I've never read.
Well, they definitely took things. So Thanos was originally introduced in Iron Man number 55, a creation of Jim Starlin, not a creation of Stan Lee, and he eventually became the nemesis mainly of Captain Marvel and Warlock. So right after Thanos was introduced in Iron Man, he became, there was a big story arc in Captain Marvel where Thanos was trying to get possession of the Cosmic Cube, which eventually in the Marvel Cinematic Universe became the Tesseract. But it was a matter of getting the Cosmic Cube and being in charge of everything. And eventually he was beaten by Captain Marvel, and then he became the nemesis of Adam Warlock. And that was where it began the seeds of his intention his infatuation with death, and to wipe out all of life. And the final culminating battle in the 70s took place, it was a two-part story that took place in Avengers Annual number 7 and Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 2 from 1977. And it really is a lot of this. It is basically everybody versus Thanos. And everybody at that time was the Avengers and Captain Marvel and Adam Warlock and Moondragon and The Thing and Spider-Man, a full complement of Avengers at that time. All of them against Thanos, and he is ultimately beaten and killed in that. But as in all things Marvel or comic book wise, people come back.
Absolutely.
And when he came back in the 90s, that is where, incidentally, resurrected by Jim Starlin, who created Thanos and wrote pretty much all of those 70s books, which is why Jim Starlin gets a very heavy credit in the end credits of this movie.
And he should. All the creators should get their due credit at the end of these films, because without them, we would not be able to enjoy these characters on screen.
Oh yeah, and there are so many characters in this film that the actual thank yous, the accolades that they give at the end, they denote all these different characters created by so-and-so, and special thanks to all these contributors in the past. So it actually is a much longer list than you will see in most of the other films, because in this movie.
Just
Everybody's
the
in
scale
this
of
movie.
characters that are in this.
So in the 90s, and not to belabor the point, but the 90s is when they introduced basically the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, in the 70s, the six stones were called Soul Gems, all of the different powers. When they introduced them when they introduced Thanos and Warlock and Gamora and Pip back in the 90s, they brought in the concept of the Infinity Gauntlet and these six Infinity Stones that would be placed. And there was a long, at that point, I believe Thanos was there to stay. He was such a great character that I don't know that he's actually ever left the comic book universe since then, even in his various forms.
But he's a great villain. I mean, at the end of at the end of the first Avengers, when they have that teaser at the end and they show, you see Thanos turn around and smile, I remember the entire audience going nuts that, okay, this is the big villain. And the fact that he kept getting teased and teased until now. But, like, we were there together. You were there, too. Like, I know you kind of you got pretty excited. And I remember, like, a lot of the people that we were with, like, almost basically jumped out of their chair. Like, they couldn't believe they're going to bring Thanos to the movies. Like, he's going to be in a film.
Yeah, I mean, when you sit there and you come up with, like, you know, who's the big gun?
The big guy?
The big gun at the end of the storyline. Right. Your mind instantly, you know, might go to a character like Galactus. But, you know, basically that was
still
that's going to be with the Fantastic Four.
Same thing with Doctor Doom. He was with
Doctor Doom
another
with the Fantastic
company.
Four. But Thanos is, you know, a perfect contender for, like, you know, a big villain for everybody to be after. And ultimately Thanos, you know, was behind, you know, the invasion of Earth.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so I mean, he's been behind the scenes. He's been at the very beginning of this, and it's going to be. I'm really much looking forward to the final part of this movie, and see where they go from there. Because I remember seeing Avengers: Infinity War for the first time, and you had to realize it really was considered like it was being called Part 1. You know, because you know
before it was Infinity War, it was just going to be Avengers 4 Part 1 was the obviously very early title until they finally gave it Infinity War. And now we know the Part 2 is Endgame.
And I think there were a lot of people that saw the movie and were kind of
like
upset about where this wasn't a full movie.
I remember hearing that too. Like they wanted it wrapped up.
They wanted, and it's like, no, you don't understand. The story is very big.
It's Part 1 going to Part 2. So I mean, like we can, you know, we're going to look at this film and give it our best review, knowing that this is a Part 1 because the entire story hasn't even been told yet. You know, this whole Part 2 might change your feelings on Part 1 based on the whole outcome. So we don't really know yet what's going to happen until the end of April when this movie finally comes out.
Yeah. So I mean, you don't get the full story arc. It is intentionally half of the story.
Correct.
And that's fine. So in a sense, you know, usually the most dramatic and climactic part of a storyline is usually, you know, the third act. So basically what you've got here is a full Act 1, which is very introductory, and then either a full Act 2 or half of an Act 2. And so you could say that, you know, in terms of all the action in the storyline, there are certain parts that may have been a little slow, but they were establishing the final design of the endgame. And you're not going to get that unbelievable finale until the next movie, and that's to be expected. You know, you have to go into these movies understanding what the storyline is. You know, if you saw the Lord of the Rings trilogy and expected everything to be done by the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, you're missing the point. You know, you have to understand what you're watching. So,
one thing I really did enjoy with Infinity War is I really enjoyed how the groups of characters that they put together. Because they mixed and matched certain characters in this film and paired them off, I thought, pretty well. Like Thor being paired off with
the Guardians.
You know, even for that short bit where he had that great scene, and then him being with Groot and with Rocket. I loved how he kept referring to him as Rabbit.
Yes.
That
Priceless.
I thought that's just pure MCU Thor, I think, at this point. I will say that this film did something a little different where it held back on the quick one-liners that Marvel has been kind of building on. Ever since the first Guardians film, I've almost felt that every film after that has tried to emulate that, all those like quips and those one-liners that they got, and they tried to one-up the previous Marvel film. So it almost got to me drowned out a little bit in some of those films in between.
I feel, and sometimes that works, and sometimes
yes, it does. Yes, I think there's appropriate times for that.
Yeah, and I thought the jokes that were in Ant-Man actually worked.
In the first Ant-Man.
Yeah, in the first Ant-Man. Yes. It actually was. It wasn't over the top and overboard. It worked, and it was funny. And I feel it failed in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yes, it felt very repetitive of that.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's very similar to the first Guardians of the Galaxy and this Volume 1 and Volume 2. Because in Volume 2, I felt they were doing, again, they were trying to emulate the first film and what worked.
Right.
But you had already done a lot of that, so you needed to do something different.
Yes.
But that's why I was happy with this film, where they kind of held, I think they restrained themselves a little bit, because it is a little bit more of a serious film. Just the stakes are so high just from the very beginning when you know what Thanos is trying to do. So I was actually happy that they didn't take away from that by keep throwing in a joke every other line.
Well, I mean, the good thing is you keep it, because all the different Marvel movies kind of had a little bit of a different like style and personality to them. And basically, what you did is you brought all those individual personalities into this film. So when the Guardians were on screen, there was more of a chance that there was going to be some jokes, and there were.
And their personalities, like you said, were very different compared to the other films prior to that coming out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, just talking briefly about the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, that was to me I think they took a big chance, and it paid off, because it was
time.
They hadn't made a movie like that, I don't think, ever. And they did it with a lot of, at that time, relatively no-name characters.
No one knew that. I'll be honest, when I saw that first trailer, the only thing that I thought that was really good about it was the music. When I'm watching some of that first trailer, I was like, they're going to put these guys on screen? Like, we're going to go and watch this? But I saw the movie and I thought it was fantastic. Like, that to me is one of my favorite Marvel films.
To me, it was a big risk. And again, if Marvel was making individual self-included movies, I would imagine they would not have taken that risk.
But
the fact that it was embedded in a larger structure, where all these movies are kind of together, and they're all making a lot of money, and at that point, they were well on their way. It was a profitable franchise, period. Yes. So they were able to take a little bit of risk, and they did, and it paid off immensely.
And they all became likable characters.
Oh yeah, and I think a lot of that really kind of paid off in Thor Ragnarok as well, because Thor Ragnarok was very different from the first two Thor movies in terms of style.
By far the best Thor film.
And it had a lot of funny jokes and some funny characters. Jeff Goldblum was the Grandmaster, and it was to me, I think it was a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it was really, really enjoyable and nonstop, and it had a lot of jokes, and almost all of them hit, which was uncommon.
And I think that's where some of the other films kind of get me a little bit, is that some of them, because you're almost waiting for the punchline at some point. Like, I'm almost waiting for one of these actors to just kind of throw out one of those one-liners, and I don't want it to get to that point. It should almost be like unexpected and just like very, very easy. Just rolls off the tongue, seems very fluid. Like, it shouldn't seem like it's forced. And I almost felt for a period of time with some films, it felt like it was a little forced just to get the comedy in there, just to get that aspect.
And that usually can be just somebody who's the decision maker behind the scenes. That could be just the person saying like, hey, this worked for Guardians, let's do it here. And somebody saying, well, it's Doctor Strange isn't that type of movie. And somebody just says, well, we don't care, just put it in there.
Right, that could have been someone from Marvel saying, okay, this is what we want to make a couple changes here.
This is why you want the money people to not necessarily influence too much of the creative people.
Exactly.
So I mean, I do think.
But this worked. What they did in Infinity War, I thought.
No,
really,
I think it did. I think one of my favorite lines is from Mantis. And it's hard to say because you're so used to saying it the right way. We kick names and take ass, which is really really funny.
It's very funny because it's just, we all get the joke, but it's just the fact that how she's saying it just worked really well.
And I can tell you, I mean, I think Mantis is one of my favorite characters in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it just goes to show you the depth of the Marvel Universe in terms of how many characters there are. Mantis is not a household name.
No.
Mantis is not a tier 1 or even a tier 2 character. Mantis was around in the 70s and she was kind of cool and didn't really last much longer. But that just shows you how good the writing of these characters were. Whether it had been written by Stan Lee or Roy Thomas or Marv Wolfman. All these characters, because Steve Englehart, Jim Starlin, all these characters that were created, they're movie ready. You can just pull these in, and you don't see that. Unfortunately, you don't see that as much in the DC universe because DC, I think, was really stuck in that mindset of the only way we're going to make money is with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and that's it.
And they didn't even have Wonder Woman. That was only recent.
Yeah. Well,
for years prior to that, prior to the more recent films, it was just Superman and Batman, and that was
TV
it.
show, yeah,
and the TV show, right?
But eventually they said, okay, let's get Flash and Green Lantern. It's like, okay, not for nothing, Flash and Green Lantern are still tier 1 characters.
Absolutely.
There are more tier 1 characters. DC has to take a little bit of a chance and pull in more of their characters.
And I think you're seeing that with Shazam. To me, Shazam. Right. I don't know if I put him up at tier 1. Not to sidetrack from
you can't go to the same well over and over
right.
and over.
I think you have to start taking chances, and hopefully DC's doing that with Shazam, and hopefully that's successful, so that they can start milling out some of their other side characters. Because they should. Some of these characters really should get on screen, so that everyone can go and enjoy them.
Every character in the Guardians of the Galaxy is a low-level tier 2 or even a tier 3 character. And they put them all in this one team. And for the record, that's not even the original comic book Guardians of the Galaxy. Almost the only, none of them are. It's a completely different group. You get a character like Groot, who literally appeared in, prior to 1990, I think Groot appeared in 3 comic books. And one of them was a reprint of the previous one. You're taking they're able to take characters that have been in 3 comic books and make a successful character out of that. An endearing character. I think there are people that love Groot. It's hysterical. And that's one of the things that Marvel has to bank on. That all the characters that they haven't used yet are available for the next generation. You're talking about characters that have not been touched yet: Submariner, Moon Knight, She-Hulk,
yep.
And a horde of villains, because there's the ratio of villains to heroes is probably 20 to 1 or if not more. So there is a lot to look forward to. Okay, so back to Avengers. Back to Avengers. We'll keep. We're
gonna do some references and some side tracks.
We'll keep departing, and we'll keep getting back to Avengers.
But we'll come back. We'll get back on track. I think. Seeing Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and Tony Stark together, I thought that was an interesting combination because you have the 2 brilliant minds of both Strange and Stark, and then you throw in this young kid in the mix who's got kind of a little bit of a mouth on him,
who literally might be the best Spider-Man.
Yeah, out of all the ones that we've had, has done such a fantastic job in just a couple of times that we've seen him. Obviously he had his full film in Homecoming, but just a little bit we saw him in Civil War, and this film, he really has been fantastic. I'm very happy that we're getting Tom Holland's the second film is coming, Far From Home, is going to be coming out this year. So that I'm looking forward to that, and that's the fun film now that we're talking about this movie because. I almost want to get to at the very end, and we'll discuss this. But all the characters, what happens after the snap? All these big names that we know, they're not going away. You're not getting rid of some of these huge franchise characters that they just literally had their first films, like with Black Panther or with Spider-Man. We know that these guys are coming back at some point, so it'll be interesting to really see how that all occurs.
Well, I mean,
And I don't want to jump the gun and get to that and jump to the end, because that is like the biggest revelation and discussion is really about what's going on with the snap.
right. I mean, it really is a good discussion to say, basically to see who is on which side of the snap. And
Yes.
to me, it's not as Thanos would say, random.
Right. Yeah, and that's something, that's definitely a discussion that's coming, I think.
Yeah, we'll
But,
get to that.
You know, I think it's funny for some reason, and I was telling John this during the view, is that Tony Stark still has the small little cell phone that Steve Rogers gave him at the end of Civil War.
In his back pocket.
In his back pocket. Why? First of all, there's a number in it, so Tony, the most technologically advanced human around, doesn't put that in his own cell phone. Like he's still carrying around the early 2000 flip phone that he got from him.
He's literally carrying a second phone around.
Like, I get the joke when Captain America gives it to him, because it's a flip phone, and you know Captain America is old school, so I get that part. But why the heck is Tony still carrying that around? That, to me, I was like, I feel like he shouldn't have that anymore. But this is, I mean, that's stupid and it's nitpicking, and I understand that. But it's just, when you really dive into it, it's like, I feel like Tony would have just done something different. I feel like he would have found it, or he wouldn't have the phone on him. Like, all of a sudden, like, why would he think the world's going to come to an end? I need to have Captain America's phone on me at all times, just in case I need to contact him.
Right. I think it's maybe a good time to bring up some of the other things that are a little odd about the film. One of the things I always, not about the film, but in general, I always found it a little odd. When you hear the line where Thanos says, we got to go to Earth and get 2 of the Infinity Stones. And it's like, okay, these Infinity Stones have been around since the Big Bang. They've spread out to all corners of the universe, and and lo and behold,
Earth gets 2.
Earth has 2 of them. And so Doctor Strange has the Time Stone, and that makes sense. He's the master of the mystic arts. He's guarding it. He's using it. That kind of makes sense.
Well, Loki did. Well, I think we also have to keep in mind too that Loki brought the staff to Earth. So technically, I guess you could say just it was the Time Stone, but it was because of Loki when he came and they got the staff from him. And Age of Ultron, that's where they got the Mind Stone from. It was in Loki's staff.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's the one that eventually got to fix the Vision's head.
And that's the Mind Stone, right?
Right. And that to me, that's it's almost a little convenient because
right.
because the Vision is walking around with an Infinity Stone upon his head. Why is he not really much more powerful than he is?
I thought he was much more powerful in Age of Ultron.
Is he incapable of handling the power? I mean, I guess so. Because keep in mind, in the comic books, the Vision is not a possessor of a soul gem or an Infinity Stone. In the comic books, he just has basically a gem on his head that is just a solar converter. It takes the sun's rays, solar energy, and converts it as a power source. It's a very normal comic booky thing. It's not grand scale. It's not he's not using it to fight Galactus. He's just using it as part of his construct. So having him being upgraded to a holder of an Infinity Stone in the movies, to me it's a significant departure and upgrade of his character. But I think it was done more out of a convenience to corral.
I think so too. To
corral the
stones. Yeah, I think so. I agree with that. But they make it work. I'll say that they do. They make that aspect work.
And another thing is with Thanos' grand plan is like I said, the radical departure from the comic book is in the comic book he wants to kill everybody, and now he wants to kill half the universe. So I guess it was more marketable to do it that way.
Absolutely.
But that type of plan does come with its flaws in 2 senses. They're not on the surface. So I think the plan sells. From a movie standpoint and from a viewer standpoint, the plan works on film. But if you really think about it, it does break down a little bit to something that doesn't make sense. Because ultimately, one thing is he's eliminating all humanoid life, as opposed to all life. You know what I mean? The resources of the universe are being used up by all living things. I don't think half of the ants on Earth disappeared. You know, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's like
Do you think it's more sentient life at this?
I would consider all life to be sentient.
Right.
But I mean, it really is just, you know, humanoid-based life, which is, you know,
Highly evolved.
yeah, which is a little bit, you know, a little bit of a quirk. The other part of it is that you got to keep in mind that life in the universe ebbs and flows. You know, like, so he went to Gamora's planet and they were overpopulating. You know, so kill half of them makes sense. You know, every planet in the universe is at a different level,
Different stage
of its
their
life
evolution.
cycle.
Yeah.
You know, the planet that is in the middle of birthing life, you know, probably can't afford to lose half of its life. You know what I mean? You know, life in the universe is not at one level. It's everywhere life exists is at its own level. There are planets that have not given birth to life yet and will in the future. There are planets that have the life is already gone because they've gone to extinction. You know, the universe has been around for billions of years. You know, so there is a certain flaw to it if you really look into it. Is it enough for them to change their plot in the movie?
No.
No. But if you really looked at it from a scientific standpoint,
Which they're not counting on.
right, exactly. You know, but if you think about it, you sit there and say, well, wait a second, doesn't that really not make sense? You know, not every planet is on the brink of extinction because not everybody's on the same. Not everybody's on the same clock.
Has, you know, almost 8 billion people on the planet.
You know, there are definitely planets out there that are just walking around, you know, with much less evolved life. The rationale is, I think, is, you know, humanoid life tends to take away more than they get. But if you have a planet just running around with plants and apes,
Right.
whatever, they're not dying out. They're living life the way they should be, the way
Right.
life was intended. You know, with a balance of nature. You know, it is humanity that is, like as I said in The Matrix, humanity is more like a virus
Right.
than a contributor to the well-being of the universe. So I understand that, but if you really look at it technically, you fall into some of those pitfalls. But again, does it take away from the movie? No, not really.
No.
I think it still is.
No, it's a conversation to have at some point afterwards with friends, but I don't think that's what the Russo brothers were
Right.
thinking about when
I
making
would
the
expect
plot.
that type of analysis to be in an episode of The Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon
Yes.
says this makes absolutely no sense if you really think about it.
Yeah,
Right.
and he would be the character to actually come up with that too.
And we are not The Big Bang Theory, but
No, although we like the Big Bang Theory.
we could be. Oh, we love The Big Bang Theory.
Right. I'd like seeing the. Oh boy. See, this is the part where after you go through it after a while, you start really thinking. You almost overthink it.
Sure.
To a degree. I did thought it was interesting that they withheld the Hulk and didn't show him the whole film.
You know what? I had a little. I kept a little cliff notes about like things I wanted to work. That was one of the things I wanted to work. In my head, I'm going, was it a budget thing? Did they want to just save a little on the budget by not doing the Hulk?
I just wonder if they're just holding back because he might have more of a role in a second film. Because obviously, I think at some point he's coming toe to toe with Thanos again. At some point, I think you're going to have Hulk Thanos.
Hulk is going to get his courage back and come.
You're going to see that, But is it just because he got beat that he doesn't want to come out and play? Like I don't. That's the part that I just really didn't understand.
It is a bold move because basically you shelved one of your main characters for part one.
Right.
And maybe it was just done to. Maybe it was done. I don't think it was done for budgetary reasons. I think they could care less about that. I think maybe it was done to give the fight
shining on other characters.
To other characters.
I mean, you shine. I mean, listen. Obviously, when we get to Wakanda, by the time we get there, we're really shining on Captain America, of course, Black Panther, and then finally, Thor coming back.
Right.
Thor's entrance when he gets the Stormbreaker and arrives in Wakanda is one of my favorite parts of Infinity War. Just to see him all powered up with his new weapon and just starts leveling the field.
Yeah, kind of looking like with the electricity that he
Yes.
showed at the end of Thor Ragnarok,
Exactly.
where he came into.
It's just so powerful, and you just see when you finally start to really see some of Thor's power, which I think in his first two films you really didn't see that much. even in, I would say, the first two Avengers films, to a degree, you really didn't see that as much. But the fact that they really showed it in this one was great. I wonder, is it going to be something the opposite going into 4, where Thor had his fight with Thanos at the end, stabbed him, and are we going to see something different going into Endgame?
Well, I mean, with the absence of the Hulk character in the final, not the end battle of the first Avengers movie, you really needed a character like Thor to show up, because what you have is you have Thanos walking around with an Infinity Gauntlet with 6 gems in it, and he's like the most powerful being in the universe. And then you got Wakandans throwing spears at him.
Right, and there's only so
and
much.
He's blocking them, and it's like you got the Winter Soldier,
Falcon shooting them with
machine
bullets.
guns at him, and it's like
which is a joke.
There is a little bit of absurdity in that, because a character like the Black Widow, isn't is shooting whatever
her electric
venom
that
blast.
she's like that, like she's not doing there. Even Captain America only has so much strength. He's not going to be able to do as much. I mean, look at Iron Man. Iron Man had the most sophisticated suit out there, and there's only he barely scratched Thanos. There's only so much he can actually do with that.
Right, and I just found it funny, like you actually see Thanos going to the motions of blocking these attacks.
Right.
Whereas if he literally just stood there
and
he wouldn't.
He could just squeeze his gauntlet.
It would do nothing.
Right. It's funny how like when Gamora and Quill are on in the what's that nowhere section of space. And they're there, and Thanos is getting the Reality Stone.
Yes.
Right, so the two of them are there, and he shoot his gun, and he turns the laser blast into bubbles. So he could have easily just done that, rather than just like pushing away.
Right, or done nothing. The bullets would have hit him. And they would have done nothing.
I honestly think he's that strong.
These are not cosmic weapons. It just. But I guess from a movie making standpoint, it would look silly for him to ignore their efforts. But if you really think about how powerful he is, it's absurd that he would even care about their efforts.
Exactly.
So it's just one of those things where, like, you have to take the story design into it.
Well, when he grabs Spider-Man, when they're fighting on Titan, he grabs Spider-Man and calls him an insect. And I don't think he's referencing his character name. I just think he's referencing a human being as an insect, because I think that's how he does see everybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is how much the heroes, almost sabotaged their own efforts at every point where, it's,
Yeah.
almost at every stone, there's a hero making the noble decision, but the wrong decision in terms of a strategic battle.
Quill really screws them.
Yeah, by making it personal.
Absolutely.
And taking it upon himself to punch Thanos with his gun at the moment where they're about to get his gauntlet off.
Like they are literally having it. You see Spider-Man literally pulling it to the point where you start to see the palm of Thanos, and is probably within seconds away of finally getting the whole thing off, and could probably at that point stop him.
Yeah.
And Quill can't keep his emotions in check for just a few more seconds for that to happen.
Right.
Now, okay, his love. He finds out that his love's killed. Emotionally, I'm sure that's going to stir him quite a bit. But he has, like, the fact that he couldn't stop himself and think of the bigger picture, to me, was really disappointing. And I know they have to do that for story-wise. You have to create conflict. That's the whole point of a film.
Yeah, you
need conflict. You need to basically show it. Like we're gonna show this. We're gonna dangle. That's the carrot. They're showing the carrot in front of you. They're dangling it, and just as you're about to get it, they take it away.
Something takes away, and that's what they use. They use Star-Lord's emotions as the device to take it away. And then you have the scenario where the Scarlet Witch does not want to destroy the gem.
Right.
That might be the thing that wins it all. And it's like, well, no, I'm not going to destroy the gem because it's going to kill the Vision.
If she could have destroyed it before Thanos even got there, before he even got the time stone, then at that point in time, it might have been null and void.
Now, the one person who I think is immune from that argument is Doctor Strange, because people will say, he gave up the time gem to save Tony Stark. Isn't that the same thing? And I don't think it is, because I feel my prediction is that Doctor Strange knows
this is
that
the conversation.
The one reality that they win,
yes.
Tony Stark is a key player in that. sequence of events. That's what I feel.
Well, it's either that Tony Stark is a key player, or he sees himself, the only chance that they won was by giving Thanos the stone. In all the other versions where they lost, they are trying to protect it.
I think that's definitely a valid argument, but I do think that it's a little bit of that. I think Strange knows that you need Stark, and if you lose Stark, it's gone. I mean, that's my personal prediction.
Yeah. No, you know, it's funny. I hadn't thought of it that way. I have not thought about the fact that he was doing it to save Tony because he saw Tony's role in the future. I thought more of it as by giving him the stone and letting him go through with everything, it was only then that they could finally defeat him.
Yeah, I think it might be a combination of both.
Yeah.
I think it's like, we can fight all we want. He's getting this stone, but if he's gonna get it, we need Tony alive.
Right.
Too, on top of that.
And that was especially, again, going back to the chemistry that these guys had on board the ship, where Doctor Strange is basically saying, it's like if it's a choice between the stone and you or that kid, I'm choosing the stone. And then he goes back on that after he does his little time trick. I do love the fact that Tony called them wizards at least once, if not twice, during the film. I did find that very funny.
I mean, look at what Loki does. Loki gives up the Tesseract because he's, Thanos is killing Thor. It's again, all you got to do. Apparently, all you got to do to get an Infinity Stone from anybody is to just, say you're going to hurt somebody you love, and it works every time. Now granted, Thor probably would have wished Loki would have gave it up a little sooner because all he did was, just zap his head for a while. But Gamora does the same thing. Gamora gives up the location of the Soul Gem because he's torturing Nebula. And it's like, wow.
But that is the theme. I mean, how many stones did he get by doing that?
All of them. Almost all of them.
Almost all of them.
Yeah, he almost all of them.
I actually wish they would have shown some type of flashback when Thor starts talking about how he got the Power Stone from, what's that planet where Nova's from? Xandar. I really almost wish that they showed a little flash of that as he's talking about it. Like, as Thor is narrating the destruction of Xandar, I wish they would have actually shown that, because to me, that was actually a really cool planet when they did Guardians. I would have liked to have, kind of revisited that a little bit.
The birthplace of the Nova Corps, yeah.
I would have enjoyed that. To me, the Time Stone in giving that up, I think, is one of the big conversations as to what did Doctor Strange really see, and I think that's probably one of the biggest areas that people can discuss their theories on what's going to happen and what Doctor Strange actually saw.
One quick sidebar on Doctor Strange. And I know you're not a big fan of the first Doctor Strange movie. And I'm curious if they're going to come out with a second one. I think
they are. They are. They're in talks right now. It's not that I wasn't a huge fan. It's just they make him such a jerk.
Right.
In the film. And I don't know, I haven't read a ton of Doctor Strange, and I don't know if that's his actual personality or not.
Well, in the comics, he is a jerk. He's like the biggest jerk on Earth.
Okay.
But you don't really see him for that long. But in the comic books, when he goes out and to search out the Ancient One, and learns this lesson in humility or whatever, he basically stays there and perfects his craft. And I feel that the way they did it in the movie is that he went from a complete non-believing jerk,
right,
to
the master
of the mystic arts in like a month. Maybe a little more than that, but whatever the time frame was,
it's very, very short.
Remotely seem like
that
was enough
one of
time
my big.
for him to be a master.
Well, when we discuss, I'm sure at some point we will do a discussion on some of the other MCU films. We can definitely table this discussion for then, because I agree with you. I think that was one of the points that really took me out of that movie, was the fact that how quick he learned everything, and basically by the end of the film becomes a master of it all.
Right. I mean, if this was really, if they were going to do it in a way that made sense, the Doctor Strange that you're seeing now should have been around for a good 20 years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or
10 years.
And that's why you could show he's mastered his craft over that time.
Because there was an evolution of Doctor Strange, even in terms of power level, in the comic books. He was he was a novice, and then he became, master of the mystic arts, and then, he became the defender of the dimension,
Right.
of the Earth dimension, and he even gained even more powers after that. It has to be a level of years, even to the point of 10 years, and I just don't think they addressed that aptly, to the point where it made it unbelievable that he would go from zero to
From
hero,
nothing to hero,
from
yeah.
zero to hero
Yep.
in that short amount of time.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I think discussing the end battle. I don't know what those creatures were. I was actually asking him this during the film.
And I can honestly say I
All right, so take us back to the comics.
yeah. So even though I'm a big comic fanatic, my comic book heyday is the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and even into the 90s. The last good 25 years, I don't actively buy comics or actively read them, but I do know a little bit of what's going on. So there are a lot of times where Chris will tell me, hey, is this character in the comics? And I'll be like, you know what, I don't know. So these so the new Guardians of the Galaxy were in the comics.
Yes.
It was a new team.
It was all new. I mean, that was done within the last, I think, like in the early to mid 2000s. I think the new team came out, and it's the characters that we know from the films.
I didn't recognize any of the children of Thanos, but I'm pretty sure they're from the comic books as well. These creatures that they're attacking in Wakanda, I have no idea whether they're from the comic books or not.
I think Wakanda is special. I thought that was such a great idea to have the fight in Wakanda. The fact that we got to see Black Panther's sister and just how smart she is. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing a scene between her and Tony Stark. I really hope that happens in Endgame, just of how brilliant both of those people are. I'm wondering if it's them together that helped to resurrect Vision at some point to kind of fix him, since his body is just basically dormant at this point in time.
Oh yeah, I think this is a good time to talk about the snap.
Yeah.
In terms of, okay, so who got snapped and who didn't? And
None of the original Avengers.
Right. So
which obviously was done intentionally.
it's got to be done.
No matter, you could talk about randomness all you want. The
Nope.
fact that the original Avengers, but Rhodey's there, which I thought was interesting.
Well,
Rhodey's he's still around.
I mean, to me, basically, it looks like, I think the theory is that anybody that was actually killed on screen, in terms of, like, whether it's a broken neck or shot, or, like, I think those characters are dead.
Well, we're talking so basically we have to separate it as pre-snap and post-snap.
Right. So pre-snap, you had characters like Loki,
Heimdall.
and Heimdall. They were physically killed.
They were physically killed beforehand.
And as far as I'm concerned, they're dead. And if you look at their movie contracts, basically I think their time is up.
Their time was up.
This is how they're weeding everybody out.
And I'm sorry, but if you do bring them back, I think it cheapens their death a little bit.
I do too.
It's not like they died from a snap. They literally died physically from Thanos. So I wouldn't, as much as I love Heimdall and Loki, I would not want to see them come back.
Oh, and a lot of
film.
other Asgardians were killed in Thor Ragnarok. I mean, the Warriors 3. These,
Yes, they were all taken out. Hela took them all out.
Killed a boatload of these people.
Right.
And I mean, I think these characters, they're gone. So I'd love to see.
Gamora's the question mark.
Well, okay, so one, I'd like to see what they're going to do with Thor going forward, because Thor isn't immortal; he's not a human.
Right.
So what are they going to do with Thor going forward? Gamora. So
Well, Thor wasn't. He didn't go away from the snap.
no, he didn't.
he's
But
still-
again, I think Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, just what are they going to do with him?
Studio is up.
Okay, yeah,
What are they going to be doing with the Thor character after Avengers Endgame? Is he going to be physically killed by Thanos, or
We should play. Well, after we discuss the snap, let's talk about who we think is leaving and
Right.
who's staying.
So now Gamora is basically was a sacrifice to the Soul Gem.
Right.
Now in the comics, and I'm going back to what I saw in the 70s, the Soul Gem steals people's souls, and they reside inside the
stone.
soldier.
Okay, I think that's the
So
theory.
Thanos in the 70s, Gamora and Adam Warlock and Pip the Troll, who they didn't use in any of these movies yet. When they were killed, by to speak, they were by means of the Soul Gem, they were pulled into the Soul Gem, and at some point they came out of the Soul Gem. So to me,
That's been my theory.
I think Gamora's, I think they're definitely going to keep going forward with the Guardians, and I think they would go forward with Gamora as well. So I don't think Gamora is out.
I don't think so
Gamora somehow Gamora will come back from that abyss.
Yeah, I agree with you
potentially.
on that. And I think anyone that was killed after the snap, I think all those people are coming back. I really don't think anybody's going to.
To me, I think the end game is somehow the reversal of what Thanos did. So all the people that faded away, they're coming back.
Right.
All the people that didn't fade away, most of them, I think, are going to be physically killed in final battle.
I think if you had to say,
who do you have?
I mean,
all the original, all the oldest characters.
All the original
so not random.
No, I completely agree. I mean, the people that I think are actually the two biggest names are obviously going to be Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. Chris Evans had sent out a tweet, when they wrapped production on Endgame, just thanking the crew and all the fans and everyone. To me, it was almost like a farewell tweet that he sent out. I remember that getting a lot of scrutiny that week when he sent that out. So there is a good possibility that this is the last we'll ever see of Chris Evans.
And even the guy who played the Hulk.
Mark Ruffalo.
I
think he'll still be around.
He's been playing the Hulk for a long time.
He's been playing it since the first Avengers.
He took over the reins quite a long time ago. So I think he might be up as well.
He could be. For some reason, I don't see Mark Ruffalo changing over that role yet. I'd be shocked if Thanos killed Hulk.
Yeah, because ultimately, every single person who didn't get snapped, I'm not saying they're all going to die. Obviously, there's going to be some carryover, but it is very obvious that the oldest characters did not get snapped.
Right.
And if Avengers Endgame is supposed to be their last movie, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah. Well, when Tony got stabbed by Thanos, when that happened, I was like, wow, since they're actually going to do it in this film. And then he pulls it out and uses that, I don't know, some type of webbing or, whatever, freeze, nanites.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how he healed himself.
Whatever he used there to stop the bleeding and all that stuff, I was like, okay, I guess he's going to be safe for now. And of course, in the trailer, we see him kind of floating off in space, so that'll be interesting to see how he gets out of that situation.
Now, the one problem I had with the snap was just in terms of how they displayed it, because it was always described of that Thanos is going to snap his fingers and that's going to be it.
Right.
And cinematically, that's a little boring, because in theory, everybody should have just all those half should have all left at once, and instead you had people watching someone else fade, and then they started to fade.
Yes.
So it made it
a little more dramatic.
It made it more dramatic,
yeah.
And then you have someone like Nick Fury, who watched his partner fade, and then he realized he's about to fade, but he's trying to send the signal to Captain Marvel on his phone, and his body is disintegrating. But the last thing to disintegrate is like his thumb that's hitting the button.
Well, again,
and it's
convenience.
like, okay, the convenience of storytelling. But to me, I was just like, I'm like, okay, everybody should have just snapped. Now, granted, that makes a little bit of a boring ending.
Right.
But it's one of those things where if you're gonna go a route, you gotta make it work. You gotta make it make sense. And I think it was subtle enough where again, where nobody really noticed it unless you really think about it.
Well,
to me, it wasn't an insult to your intelligence.
No, I don't think so either. But
it was like, if you really thought about it, everybody should have disappeared at once.
Granted, I mean, listen,
which makes sense.
It should have, but the way that they ended up doing it, because of the characters they focused on and who actually started to fade away, like Black Panther, Spider-Man, Groot disappeared.
Yes.
Quill, Drax. Who else? There was, I mean, the few others that disappeared. The fact that they get to focus on
didn't all the Guardians?
I think all the Guardians except Rocket.
Except Rocket.
Rocket's still around. So I think by doing that, it just made it much more dramatic effect. You know, especially I remember hearing a lot when Spider-Man starts to fade away, how much kids got upset because they thought Spider-Man died in the film. And you know, I just remember like parents trying to like console their children, their young kids, being like, no, don't worry, he's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Because we all know he is. I mean, obviously,
there's another Spider-Man.
There's another Spider-Man movie that's coming out, so obviously he is. And we know that Black Panther did so well this past year; it's nominated for Best Picture, and we know that that's going to have another film. So there's no way he's going away.
Right.
But you know how they shot that, and you see on, I think what's her name, Denari, the actress that plays like his right hand, Okoye. She's like the warrior, right?
For who?
The one that's in Walking Dead. Yeah, Black Panther. So
Michonne. I don't know her real
I think
name.
it's Denari. I think that's her real name.
Gotcha.
So like you see, like the expression she has in her face when Black Panther disappears is just like utter shock, and just you almost can feel the emotion through her. Like I loved her in this, and I really liked her in Black Panther too. Like she is so good in this. That fight scene where it's her, Black Widow, and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was such a great fighting scene, just to see the three of them team up together and going after one of the children of Thanos. I thought that was really well done.
I'm just looking at my notes and say, I think I hit almost a lot of the things I wanted to say. Very, very.
Yeah, this video had a lot. You know, we wanted to make the first one special. A couple hiccups along the way. But I think overall, you can obviously hear in our discussion about this and our opinions that I think both of us pretty much enjoyed this film.
Yeah.
A couple of nitpicks aside, but you know, we enjoy where the direction's going with the MCU, and I think we're both really looking forward to seeing Endgame.
And I don't think our reviews are going to follow like a standard scene by scene analysis.
No, I don't think so either.
Going through a review. I mean, it's more of a kind of an open,
discussion.
An open discussion. Our reviews assume you have seen the film, so we're going to be jumping around a little bit and going off on tangents and so on and so forth. And I think it's those tangents that where you get a lot of more of the deeper insights and interesting commentary.
I just think it brings a little bit more to the conversation rather than just saying, okay, we're going to give this film 4 out of 5 stars. And here are the reasons why.
And this is what the movie is. And
right.
This is what I liked about it.
We're going to go, okay, 10 minutes in, this happens. We could do something like that, but I don't know if that's really our style.
Right.
We want to not to say that that's people like doing that. People want to hear about bit by bit, scene by scene. That's great. I just don't think that's our style in the way that we want to do things.
And we're not following the script. We're just we're going off the cuff. So we start somewhere and we get to another point, and then we go to the next point, and we'll work our way around. We may wind up even reviewing the film in reverse.
Yes.
We're just gonna talk about the different pieces and the places and the parts and get there, and it's just meant to be fun. And hopefully we hit enough interesting topics, and hopefully we hit things that you've never heard before from other people, because I think everybody has a unique perspective on things and opinions, and the only way you get to those things is by going down those roads and talking about it.
We might get some guests on here every now and then. It might not just be the two of us. We might get some family members involved or friends involved every now and then, and have a third person on here just to get another opinion, another set of thoughts. So you never know what's going to end up happening on the show.
Sure, and they're not all going to be superhero movies, because like I said, they're and they may not always even be a current film. Might be maybe an older film worth revisiting. And again, it might not even be a movie. It may just be a cinematic discussion point.
Absolutely.
Where we go through.
Maybe we just discuss our top 10 films or something of that nature.
Talk about 10 best comic book movies, or 10 best superhero movies, or 10 best anything.
Right.
Or just talking
Favorite
about
comedies.
the Academy Awards coming up, the nominations.
Yep.
It could be anything related to cinema. So again, it could be a specific film, current or old. Could be just a general discussion point.
Right. Or it could be a review. You never know. But I think
we'll be a box of chocolates.
Absolutely. Well put. I think just keep checking us out. Follow us and subscribe to us if you can, and hopefully we look to put out the next video soon. And I think the next one should be another good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I think they'll all be good.
So we hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of Goodie and MoMo7 Go to the Movies.
Yeah.
All right. So enjoy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm gonna finish my Guinness.
Take care. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.